Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch, and this is week 4 of NFL action. Just going to be a solo episode with me today. Pops and Maul could not make it. Going into week 4, we'll talk about each of the games, breaking down, starting off with the Thursday night game, and then going through with both of the Monday night games coming up this week. But before we get into that, do want to break it down in terms of an interesting stat. So, how many teams in the NFL have ever started 0-4 and made the playoffs? 0-4. Now, just to give you a percentage, 0-3 teams have a 3.2 percentage of making the playoff. Pretty low. Very, very low. From the 0-4 standpoint, only one team in NFL history, the 1992 Chargers, have ever started 0-4 and made the playoffs. Now, how did that end up for them? They ended up making the Super Bowl. Then they ended up getting murdered by Steve Young and the 49ers. When you take a look at who has the possibility of going 0-4 in the NFL, you've got the New York Jets. They're 0-3. Miami Dolphins are 0-3. The Texans and the Titans, 0-3. That's going to be important when we talk about the Texans, as both of those teams face off with the Texans and the Titans. You got the Giants 0-3. The Saints are the last 0-3 team. I think when you look at all those teams, the only one that's probably surprising to you is the Houston Texans. They really need the win from a statistical standpoint, not just with making the playoffs, and I'll go into that here in a second in terms of why does that matter. It really matters in terms of just winning your division. The only thing that's good for the Texans in terms of where they're at in the win column is the fact that they are playing in the AFC South, which has typically been the worst division in pro football. However, Peyton Manning Jr., or wherever they pulled him out of the time zone, and now it's transported him into the body of Daniel Jones, has been lighting it up for the Colts. The Colts, with Daniel Jones, have had one punt this season. One. The Colts have been playing lights out football for 3 weeks. I get that you're going to sit back and go, look, they played the Dolphins. Look at the teams at who they're playing. They're still playing NFL teams. This is not looking at it from a standpoint of playing Austin Peay or Georgia State or, Appalachian School of the Mines. This is an NFL team that they are putting away. The Colts have looked fantastic, which you'll hear me talk about when it gets to their game. But from a standpoint of don't go 0-4, it's a big one because the Texans end up playing the 0-3 Titans. Whoever wins that game, has a chance. It's a small chance, but it's a chance. You go 0-4, it's pretty much an improbability that you are going to make the playoffs, which for Houston is a huge, I would say, shock, just based upon how we feel about this team. It wasn't that they were looked at in terms of a major threat in the AFC to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, but from a standpoint of the division, I think everyone sort of going into this year thought it's the Texans division. No one's really going to challenge them, and I think that most people, if you had said who's going to challenge them, it was the Jaguars, not the Colts. So from that, we will get going into it. Thursday night game, you've got Seattle going to Arizona. Right now, Seattle is a -1.5 point favorite. I think Sam Darnold's looked really, really good. Yes, they absolutely crushed the Saints. The Saints are becoming exactly what they were decades ago before the rebuild with Sean Payton. They are becoming the Aints of Arch Manning. I would not be surprised if here in a few weeks you see a lot of brown paper bags on fans in New Orleans. The Saints, how do you want to say that they are a bad football team without just coming out and being like they're a really bad football team. They have played competitively. Do I think that they lose every game this season? No. But do I think that at any point they look like a good football team? Also, no. They're just missing talent everywhere. Everywhere. At the position of quarterback, they have Alvin Kamara. They have Chris Olave, who really he's had glimmers in terms of having production. I almost say in terms of being like sort of like a Michael Thomas, has he had good games and a good season? Yes, but a lot more times than not, he spends more time on the injury report than he does on the field, which is very Michael Thomas like. It's a problem for New Orleans. You look at their defense, Jordan's not getting any younger. Outside of him, you really sort of look at the defense and you go, there's no one else here who you really go, man, that you got a guy that I think is really going to shine in a few years. They need a lot of help. So Seattle put them away very quickly, very easily, going against the Cardinals, who I know is Maul's, sort of that was one of his wild card teams. You look at the AFC West and they're doing exceptionally well. You've got all the teams there had a chance really going into it of being in a better position, putting themselves into a playoff position. You look at the AFC West, it's led by the 3-0 Niners. You've got Arizona 1 loss, Seattle 1 loss, Rams 1 loss. The Rams were 1 blocked field goal away from winning. They should have had the game. The Cardinals, you sit back and look at them, they both have now, 2 teams have beaten the Saints. They barely lost to San Francisco. Need a last second kick to beat the Cardinals with San Francisco. The Cardinals are playing well. I think it's why Vegas sort of has the line set where they do. The issue is I really like how Sam Darnold's playing. He's playing very reminiscent of last year during the regular season. He's really efficient with the football. JSN has risen into that number 1 role for the wide receiver position for Seattle. I like the Seahawks in this game. I think that they have played exceptionally well so far this year. I think that they are the favorite in the division. I know the Niners are sitting there 3-0, but now that they announced that Nick Bosa tore his ACL, it just hurts that defense. He is such a huge piece, and it's not that their backup is going to be bad. He's just not going to have the impact that Nick Bosa had for that team. It's not someone that you can just replace, because even though Nick Bosa may have not had exceptional games, at no point was Nick Bosa a liability. In a lot of teams, that's where you sort of get to defensive end, is he may not be the best, but at the same time, he may have some times where he just can't set the edge. He can't do that. There are things that he's not good at. Nick Bosa didn't have one of those things that he's not good at. More times than not, they were getting double teamed. Have a tight end chip, have a back dedicated to him to help out the tackle. He changed the game in terms of how teams had to adjust how they played to play off of him. With him not there, it's going to hurt the Niners. That's why I like Seattle right now, not just in this game, but in the division. Plain simple. Next game up, you got the Vikings Steelers kicking off Sunday early from Dublin, Ireland. How do I want to break down this game? Go to last year. When the Vikings played the Jets, what did the Vikings do to Rodgers? It was like, remember the Titans. We are going to blitz all night. And that is what they did against Rodgers. And it ruined Rodgers. I mean, the Vikings got to Rodgers. It was clear that they did not have an answer for Brian Flores' defensive scheme for the Vikings. The thing that makes me worried for the exact same result is when you look at the Steelers' offensive line, it hasn't played well. Rodgers has been getting pressure. Has Rodgers played really well this year? Yes. From that standpoint, yes. Rodgers has looked like the old Rodgers. I think if you had a better offensive line around him, the Steelers are easily 3-0. They have just gotten a lot more pressure on Rodgers than you would be comfortable for a quarterback of his age. I think that Brian Flores calls the exact same game plan for the Vikings. I think they get a lot of pressure. That Vikings defense we saw last week, I get it was against Jake Browning and the Bengals, but they are a good defensive team in the Vikings. I like Carson Wentz. I think that the only way the Steelers win this game is if the Vikings are dumb enough to start JJ McCarthy again. If it's me, I leave Carson Wentz in the starting quarterback position for this game. At least get JJ healed up more. It's one of those ones that JJ has shown especially in that Monday night game, that he can make some really bad decisions and open the door for a team to come back that really shouldn't be in the game. The Steelers' best chances if JJ plays. I like the Vikings defense. I like Carson Wentz leading the offense, giving Minnesota in Ireland to come away victorious. Then going into the normal schedule in terms of NFL games, kicking off Commanders Falcons. Falcons just get absolutely blasted by the Panthers. Talk about things not on my bingo card. I get the Panthers winning was a shock to begin with how well the Falcons have looked so far this year. But then from a standpoint of just getting a 30 bag dropped on you with no points, awful. Penix looked terrible. It's one of these ones that this is where we always sort of go in that second year slump. Is that now we talked about it last year on the podcast, and it's so true. Teams get film on you. And when they get film on you, these guys spend their entire think it's sort of like a pro golfer. Like anytime you start going into sports, it's like your job. What do you do all day? Can you imagine if the only job you had year round was to break down film? Was to sit back and go, where does this guy struggle? Are the different coverages that he doesn't like, that he didn't do well against last year, and just go through it? And and it's not just one guy. You have a whole team of defensive analysts that break down every inch of film to figure out, where do you struggle? You think the Panthers are just a great enough defensive team that they held them to 0 points? Or do you think that teams are starting to find ways to attack Penix? I'm going to go with option number B. Did the Panthers play great on defense? Yes. But from a standpoint of, did the Panthers put together a defensive plan to really put it on Penix? Also, yes. I think the Commanders, although old on defense, Bobby Wagner is getting old. The defensive line is getting older. They still have a good defensive team. If Jaden Daniels plays this game, Commanders win handily. Right now, Washington's minus 1.5. I think that it's due to the win and how convincing they won last week against the Raiders. I would be more comfortable keeping Mariota, really sort of pushing. It's not more comfortable in Mariota leading the offense but more of, let's get Jaden completely healthy before he comes back to us at the starting position, just based upon how we played last week. Mariota's also got some skin in the game. The Falcons were the team he got cut from, set on the bench when he was rehabbing. There's bad blood there. I like the Commanders in the game. They come here to Atlanta based upon how poorly the Falcons played. They ended up firing their wide receiver coach. They're saying that their offensive coordinator is now going to call plays from the field. That doesn't really matter. I always get tickled when they're like, oh, he's going to come down to the field. Like, I get that in terms of college, that it makes it to where you have a guy that's able to talk to his player, not through a phone. This is the NFL, guys. Like, the offensive coordinator being on the field, I almost argue, is more of a hindrance, because up top, you get to see the play develop. You get to see things from that sky view that really help break it down more than on the field level, period. I like the Commanders in the game. Next game up here, as I'm rocking the new rivalry gear with the Bills. Love the chrome that the Bills are doing on the uniform this year. Rocking it on the podcast. You get the Bills playing the Saints. It is the largest spread since the Saints almost a decade ago, when the Saints were 18-point dogs. Buffalo is a 16.5-point favorite. The reason I bring that up is I know we've talked about it before on the podcast. It is an NFL team. Vegas hates giving spreads this big. Why? Because it's still an NFL team. It is just difficult to beat. Does it happen? Do the Panthers beat the Falcons by 30? Yes. Did Seattle murder the Saints last week? Yes. Does it happen often? No. Like, think about it. Last week, the Bears were a minus 1.5-point favorite against Dallas. Or, excuse me, Dallas was minus 1.5. They thought it was going to be a close game, and Chicago just blows the doors off of Cowboys, which is always great to see Jerry Jones just have to walk out of a stadium sad. You can sign me up for that any day of the week for the Cowboys to get beat. From the standpoint of the Bills minus 16 and a half, do I think that they're going to win the game? Absolutely. The Bills have the talent that they need to. I think it's a great time to rest Ed Oliver and Milano again. You know, the fact that the Bills are sitting here at 3-0 is a testament to them. Did they give up and make the game with the Dolphins a lot closer than it should have been? Yes. Did they find a way at the end of the game to pick off Tua? Yes. The Bills defense is going to get better with Ed Oliver and Milano back into their positions. However, I want those two guys fully healthy. For the Bills to make a Super Bowl run, they need those two guys in the playoffs. I want to make sure that when they come back, they are fully ready. I don't need them against the Saints. Don't need them. I wouldn't be surprised to see those two guys rest. I haven't read the injury report, but I love Buffalo in the game. The 16.5-point favorite, though, it's hard. Can Buffalo easily destroy them? 1,000%. This is always like a trap by Vegas to put money on a 16.5-point favorite just because it is difficult. There are teams have been good for a long time. Beating a team by almost 3 scores is difficult. Difficult in the NFL. It happens all the time, but that's always a Vegas trap. I love the Bills. I don't love the spread. Next game up, Browns-Lions. Browns come away, huge victory against Green Bay. If you had told me that they were going to beat the Packers, I would have said, so how many Packers got hurt? Turned out it was both of the offensive linemen they brought back off of injured reserve to play against the Browns, and then Myles Garrett and that defense dominated. One of the big stats to just prove the domination, so Mason Graham, their first round pick, defensive tackle out of Michigan, when you talk about win rates, and what that means, a win rate is when he went against an offensive lineman, who won? Did he get around this guy, or did they give it to the offensive lineman? He was ineffective in the play. If he wins, defensive tackles on average in the NFL win 9%. That's the average. Mason Graham, that game percentage, was it 9? No, it was higher. How much higher? 8 times higher. He won over 40% of the snaps. Mason Graham won. That is the highest score for a defensive tackle in the last 5 years in the NFL. That is huge. Going into this game, they have to have that type of performance against the Lions. The Lions, ever since that game against the Packers, where I think Maul put it perfectly, that it was going to be this overreaction against the Lions, that they lose Ben Johnson, they're just not going to be the same offensively. You could not watch that Ravens game and not sit back and go, the Lions are exactly the same team. The offensive play calling from the Lions down the stretch was incredible. That, handoff to Amon-Ra for the option to Gibbs to get them in the end zone, speechless. I mean, that it was such a good play call. Such a good play call. Ben Johnson's not there. Incredible. And then you just got to give it to Dan Campbell. I sit back and we have criticized, praised, gone back and forth on that man going for it on 4th down. And you know what? Me and Maul both said it after the game. Them going for it when they did and it worked out, it's just one of those ones that it was the right call. You don't want to give the Ravens back the ball. You go down and you make it now where you're not coming back. I sit back and you look at Campbell. The thing about him going for 4th down, I think it's from a player standpoint, you know what he's going to do. If you put me, it's sort of like the Eagles with the tush push, that if you get us to 4th and 1, or you get it into a manageable situation that the Lions like, the coach has your back on going for it. I mean, he's gone for it inside his own 40. They were on, around midfield when they went for it against the Ravens. I love it. I love the confidence from Dan Campbell. He's got the Lions playing hot. They're not a team that you want to play right now. Them beating the Ravens, I would argue most people did not have the Lions winning that game, came out and gave it to the Ravens. A huge win to beat really what I would say most people would say, especially going into the season, is the AFC favorite in the Ravens to go into Baltimore at night, Monday Night Football, and beat them. Huge win for the Lions. Huge. Detroit's 9.5-point favorites. Give me Detroit. Until someone can slow down. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson looked remarkable. I like the Lions defense going against Joe Flacco. I think the Browns have a great defense. They've been playing very well this season. The Lions just have a ton of weapons. You're going to guard JMO, you're going to guard Amon-Ra, and then you got Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield. They're loaded. The Lions are still a great football team. They are showing it, and with the Packers getting beat by the Browns, I would say the division's wide open. Next game up, you've got two teams that it's one of these ones you want to go, who are these teams? And it's difficult to pick this week just because of what you saw last week. You got the Panthers who, just drum the Falcons 30-0. And then you got the Patriots who lose again to the Steelers, but they're sitting at 1-2. Their one win came against the Raiders in week 1. The thing about this game that I would sit back and talk about is the Patriots every game have been competitive. They have had in each of their games the ability to win the game. They, lose against the Raiders week 1. They beat Miami week 2, 33-27. Close game, had to come from behind. They have the Steelers. Have them. Really, it was there. Turnovers cost them the game. Lose to Pittsburgh 24-14. New England has been in every game. I like them against the Panthers just because, yes, we see the Panthers just thump the Falcons. However, from a standpoint of consistency, haven't seen it from the Panthers like I have against the Patriots. I mean, you look back, Panthers just get obliterated week 1 against Jacksonville. Then they lose to Arizona. It had the score versus Arizona 27-22 was a lot closer than it should have been. They tried to mount a fourth quarter comeback against Arizona. Didn't work out for them. I like the consistency of New England. I like New England in the game. Do I think that it's still, I think it would be like a 60-40 game in terms of percentage that the Patriots win. I give the Panthers a chance to win. It's not that just Bryce Young with the Bama. I think that he has had some good, I'm not saying he's a great quarterback by any means, but he's very accurate. Like he makes throws that you sit back and go, that's an NFL throw. I think he has the capability. They've gotten some guys around. McMillan, I think, is only getting better. Especially when you watch him last week. Yes, he didn't have the fantasy production that you would like to see out of a wide receiver, but from a standpoint of his, potential in the big plays that he made, especially the one where he got up there for that football to make the catch, I like him at that position. I like Hunter Renfrow. Xavier Legette I would say, is having a down year from last year, and he didn't have a great year last year. The Panthers have the position to make this game competitive. I just like the Patriots based upon consistency. Next game up, you got the Chargers going against the 0-3 Giants. Giants have the great game against Dallas. Really should have won, and then they lose it in the overtime against Dallas's kicker to then go and just absolutely get manhandled by the Chiefs, especially from a standpoint of the Giants offense getting manhandled by that Chiefs defense. So Russell Wilson at half had 39 yards of passing in the first half. It looked awful. So much so that now the Giants are doing a typical Giants decision and saying Jackson Dart is going to be their starter. And let me just go off on one small tangent. This has zero to do with Jackson Dart. Zero to do with Jackson Dart. This is why young quarterbacks in the NFL struggle. It is not about, is Russell Wilson playing well? No. Russell Wilson had, ever since he has left Seattle, I would argue this is exactly what you get out of Russ. You're going to get these games that he looks like against Dallas, throwing these deep balls, hitting them, puts up 300-400 yards. You're sitting back, man, great. And then the very next week, he looks like he's got a Broncos uniform on again. Doesn't look good. Does that mean that he needs to be the starter? Probably not. Why throw Jackson Dart out there? You have Jameis Winston sitting there. Why throw a rookie now into the fire against San Diego? The only reason I think that you do this is because, as Brian Dable, you go, I am trying to save my job. So I'm going to just go with Jackson Dart. I'm going to give leadership what they want. They wanted him. We drafted him. I'm going to show that this was the right guy. Starting quarterbacks in the NFL as rookies for their very first start, the only guy to win was Caleb Williams last year. And who did he play? The Titans. And Will Levis was the quarterback, and Will Levis gave him that game. Caleb Williams didn't play great. The Bears did enough to win with their defense to win the game. Even Jane Daniels didn't win last year with the Commanders. It was a close game. I don't like the Giants. The Giants have a ton of problems. I think that Jackson Dart, they're going to ask him to run a lot. I think the Chargers are playing exceptionally good football right now. The Chargers are 3-0. Giants are going 0-4. I get it's at MetLife. Chargers are 6.5-point favorites. You give me to cover. I like the Chargers in the game. I don't like Jackson. It's nothing against Jackson Dart. It's just as a rookie quarterback, you're going against a team that's playing very, very well. I don't like the matchup for the kid in his first start, giving the Chargers. Next game up, really sort of, I wish that they could have flexed this to Monday night. Eagles Bucks. Baker Mayfield. I mean, you're winning big against the Jets. The Jets block a field goal, much like the Eagles did to win their game. The Jets block it against the Bucks, take it all the way down to score. Problem was they gave Baker enough time to go down and win the game, and that's exactly what he did. Emeka Ibuka is playing fantastic. I mean, what a steal in the draft for the Bucks. Absolute steal. The Bucks are without Mike Evans due to hamstring. Had it last year, really wasn't, he's still got 1,000 yards. It's one of the hamstring, it's clear. He's tweaked it again. It's a difficult muscle to heal. While you're on your feet all day, every day. It's not something like a shoulder that you can just put into a sling and say, hey, for the next 3 months, don't use it. You're going to use, unless you're in a wheelchair, you're just going to use your legs. Like, it's not possible. So from Mike's standpoint, it's a big injury for them, and you can't undersell the importance of Mike Evans to that roster. But in positive news, there was a lot of potential that Chris Godwin could be coming back to the starting ranks this week, which is huge for the Bucs. Huge. I sit back and look at them versus the Eagles. The Eagles have shown from a defensive standpoint that they are susceptible to the pass. I like Baker is playing out of his mind right now. Exceptionally well going against the Eagles. The Eagles should have lost the game. The Rams had the game. The Rams had a very good defensive standpoint against Saquon, really held him in check for most of the game. The Eagles made plays when they needed to. It took some fourth down plays. I will say, from a standpoint, something that me and Maul talked about offline, it may happen this game, and I'm interested to see. I think there has been a ton of press about the tush push this year, especially with the offsides. Eagles were offsides again last week. It was close, and it's way easier on instant replay to tell that they're offsides, but from that standpoint, it was clear. I think that what you're going to see is you're going to see some flags be thrown, and it's going to change the outcome of the game. Why do I say that? Yes, it's only a fourth down, and now it's 4th and 6 now instead of 4th and 1. The Eagles will punt. I just want you to think about how many times the Eagles have. It's really automatic. No one's shown the ability to stop them on this play. So from that standpoint, if they lose the ability to run that play consistently without getting backed up and having to punt, you think about how many times drives have just extended, that points occurred from those drives, or even touchdowns were scored on that very play at the goal line from a tush push. If you start changing the outcomes of tush pushes, it's going to affect that score. It's going to affect their ability to have the ball to score touchdowns. That changes the outcomes of the games. I really sort of lean into this. The Eagles remind me this year a lot of Kansas City last year. They have been in these one-score games. They have really, you look at the Dallas game, it was tight. And I mean, Dallas just got slaughtered by the Bears. You look at them versus the Chiefs. Chiefs haven't played well offensively, but it was a pretty close game the whole time. They were losing to the Rams. Really should have lost. It took a block, multiple block field goals for them to win the game. It is just a team that we talk about this in years past in the podcast, that teams that have been on the winning margin of these one loss or these one score games, that more times it's in their favor, eventually it catches up to you in the wrong way. And usually that happens in the playoffs. I sit back and look at this game. I know Philly is a 3.5 point favorite. I like Baker. I like Baker in this game. I like the Bucks. However, I don't like the Bucks defense. It's the only thing that keeps me from, if the Buccaneers defense under Todd Boyles was playing as they did about 2 years ago, I would be way more in tune with picking the Bucks to win the game. However, with Saquon, it changes the Eagles' dynamics. I think the Eagles should just hand this ball to Saquon 30 to 40 times this game. If they do that, they win this game. Is Vita Vea amazing at defensive tackle? Yes. But there are a lot of other holes in this Buccaneers defense, and it has shown up against other teams. I love Baker. I think he keeps them very much in this game into the end. I like the Eagles' ability to control the offensive side of the football from their standpoint. Give me the Eagles in the game. Next game up, exactly what we talked about with the statistic of 0-4 teams, only one has made the playoffs. You get the Titans going to Houston. Both of these teams are 0-3. So you're putting yourself in a position with a loss that you're pretty much saying we ain't making the playoffs. Based upon everything I've seen this year, the Titans are a bad football team. I think Cam Ward has played very, very well. Did he throw a pick six last week against Indianapolis? Yes. Indy is a good football team. It would be hard to argue that Indy is probably playing the best football in pro football right now. As in terms of 3 weeks of a body of work, who's played better than Indy? Nobody. I mean, Indy is throttling teams. The Texans and the Titans, bad football team. Cam Ward looks good. And when I say bad football team, it's sort of like the Saints. There's just a lot of positions that you look for the Titans. You're like, we don't have enough draft picks to fill all the needs that we want. If you gave us 8 first-round picks, they still probably aren't the favorites in the division next year. That's just where the Titans are. There's so many holes. The Texans, what's surprising about them, this is sort of where I go with the Texans. Has the line played great? No. Does that mean that it's all on the line's fault? No. If you watch the game, CJ Stroud has struggled. Like, the best comparison I have is the Bears. Has Caleb Williams played great? No. Has he been a little bit of the problem? Yes. What's been more of the problem? The line. Caleb, especially last week against Dallas, has shown the ability to make great plays, make big throws, put them in a position to win games. CJ Stroud hasn't shown that this year. See, if anything, CJ has hampered the success of the Texans. And then the other side is the Texans defense has not looked good at all. I think from a standpoint of their defensive line, Will Anderson has looked great, has had some big plays. They've had some sacks. But from the secondary standpoint, ugly dog. Like they got rid of CJ Gardner. Like there's a reason they told him to kick rocks. Wasn't working out in the system. Has gotten beat on too many plays. Was being a liability, and also there's a lot of rumors in terms of what people are reporting online that he was a problem in the locker room and for coaches, both players and coaches alike. Was creating some issues. I like the Texans to get back on track. It's one of these ones where teams know where they're at. They know that, hey, we don't win this game, we're not even sniffing the playoffs this year, especially with how well the Colts are playing in the division. I like the Texans to get their first victory this year. Give me Houston. Houston's 7.5-point dogs. Do I think they win by 7.5? Probably not, but I think the Texans win the game. Next game up, Danny Dimes goes to LA, plays the Rams. It's the Colts' honest really big test for them. In terms of who are the Colts, I think the Colts, like I said, it's hard not to argue that they are playing some of the best football in the NFL right now. Win 33-8 against the Dolphins, have a blocked or a missed kick by the Colts versus the Broncos that a guy jumped on top of the center that led to a penalty that got them another kick that they made to beat the Broncos 29-28, and then last week put up 41 against the Titans 41-20, have played very well. This is a big test for Danny Dimes going against the LA defense. The defense has played exceptional. You saw it last week against the Eagles. The Rams have a very, very good defensive line. Very good. They were able to very much limit Saquon's ability to have an impact in the game. Jalen Hurts made plays with Devontae. You think about that fourth down call that he caught in the end zone with Devontae Smith for them to be in a position to win that game. I think the Rams are going to treat the Colts the exact same way. Hey, you want to beat us? It's going to be on Danny Dimes. I think the issue is Danny Dimes looked fantastic. As I said, looked like a rebirth of Peyton Manning up there, just slinging it for the Colts. Call me crazy. This is my upset of the week. It's the Colts beating the Rams. As of right now, they look hot. And you take the team that looks the way they do. I like the Colts. Their defense has played well. Give me the Colts going to LA, getting a statement win for Danny Dimes and the Colts. Give me the Colts to upset the Rams this week. Next game up, you got the Jags versus the Niners. We talked about the injury to Nick Bosa. Right now, San Francisco's -3.5. When you look at their victories since Purdy and Kittle went down, so week 1, they have Purdy, they have Kittle, they get a huge win over Seattle, 17-13. The next week with Mac Jones is now 2-0 as a starter. They win 26-21 against who? The Saints. Pretty close game. And then last week, it takes a last-second field goal for them to beat the Cardinals 16-15. At no point have you sat back and been like, man, San Francisco's, Mac Jones and them, they look really good, or they really haven't missed a beat. They've struggled. Have they been victorious? Are they undefeated? Yes. But at no point do you sit back with the Niners being 3-0, being like, man, they're one of the better football teams in the NFL. That's not the case. The record is deceiving upon who the actual team is. Jacksonville's 2-1. Do I love Trevor Lawrence? As everyone knows on this podcast, the answer to that riddle is no. Do I think that the Jaguars can go into San Francisco and come away with a victory? Yes. I think the Nick Bosa injury is huge for the Niners. I think that they have struggled. Their defense has kept them in games, from a standpoint of who the Niners, they're still without Ayuk. They're out without Kittle. They really rely on Christian McCaffrey. They have Mac Jones at quarterback. I like the Jags to come away with this victory. Why? The Jags also had Mac Jones last year on the roster. They know who he is. The defense has played against him. They've seen him in the backup role. I like the Jags to come away with a victory against the Niners. Niners right now are 3.5-point favorites, but I like the Jags just based upon the Niners against lesser competition, mainly the Saints. Should have lost last week against Arizona. They haven't played exceptionally well. I don't see that changing. I like the Jags to come in and get the victory. Next game up. Who would have thought that after this week, we would sit back and say either the Ravens or the Chiefs are 1-3? Because that's the way someone's leaving this game, unless it ends in a tie. Game is in Arrowhead. Baltimore -2.5-point favorites. Keys to the game. When you think about the Chiefs and you think about the Ravens and you go, okay, both teams are 1-2. As we just talked about with the Niners in terms of their record of how it's not indicative of the team, who would you say is more not indicative of being 1-2? The Ravens or the Chiefs? I'd argue it's the Ravens. They had Buffalo. Henry's fumble cost them. Same thing against the Lions. It wasn't that they had the Lions. They weren't ahead at the time, but that fumble by Henry hurt. Do I think that Henry is like the sole reason they're losing? No. because when you watch the game against the Lions, Lamar had plenty of chances in order to get the football into the end zone on these fourth down plays, and it was like he held on to it, took a sack, like at least just throw it up there, give one of those old school in the backyard, lottery ball and throw it up there and see who comes down with it instead of just taking a sack. Like, that you're not going to get any points in that. It's like leaving the ball short in golf. If you don't hit it hard enough, it's never going to go in the hole. If you take the sack, you for sure aren't scoring. Like, I get that you may limit the other team from scoring, but dang, dude, like give your team a shot. There were times in that game that they did not make the plays the Ravens did against the Lions that they needed to in order to come away victorious. However, on the opposite side, when you look at the Chiefs, you go, are they a 1-2 team? You're like, yeah, dog, they are. The Chiefs haven't looked good. Haven't. Yes. Did they come out and spank the Giants? Of course. Giants are 0-3. Giants aren't a good football team. When you look at the other two games, handled against Philly, handled against San Diego. Their defenses, they're old. We've been saying this since last year. Like, the Chiefs are an older football team. At the position of wide receiver, they don't have it yet. Now, when Rashee Rice comes back and Xavier Worthy comes back, they'll get some star makers back that will change the dynamics of the offense. But based upon who they have on the roster going into this game, the Chiefs aren't dynamic. And then when you look at their defense has struggled. It has struggled. I like the Ravens in the game. Ravens are also liked by Vegas, 2.5-point favorites. I like the Ravens in the game. Give me the Ravens to go make the Chiefs 1-3 this week. Then move on. We got the Bears, Raiders. Bears coming off big victory against Dallas. I get Vegas had it as a close game. I don't think any of us saw the Bears just blowing out the Cowboys. I think that we probably could have. Hindsight's always 2020. You sort of look back about how the Cowboys have played against the pass this year, and they've really sucked. The Bears exploited it. The injury to CeeDee Lamb was huge, and it limited the I mean, it's sort of like that Nick Bosa comparison on defense. Like, CeeDee is a tremendous player, and it's not that the guy behind him isn't that good. It's just he's not as good as CeeDee, and he's not going to make the plays that you need in those big time situations. Because now for the Cowboys, it's Pickens, and you got Tolbert and Turpin and Jake Ferguson. Dak didn't look good against the Bears defense. I just sort of sit back and you look at the Bears and you go, well, what did they do? They when CeeDee went out, they really limited the Cowboys, held them to 14 points in the first half, and that was the score at the end of the game, and the Bears kept scoring. The Bears are going against a Raiders team. We knew this going into the year. The Raiders are not a good football team. They have a lot of holes. I think Genty's a good running back. I think they have some chances against the Bears in their secondary. Jalen Johnson's still not playing. They have some injuries in the secondary for Chicago. However, from a position of, do they have a CeeDee Lamb? Do they have some guys to take advantage of that Bears secondary? Do they have, the Amon-Ra, the Lions 50-point banger they put against the Bears 2 weeks ago? Raiders don't have that. So I like the Bears in the game. Bears are minus 1.5-point favorite. That's who I'm picking as the Bears. I like them to go into Oakland or go into Vegas and get the win. Then the Sunday night game. We just talked about the Cowboys with all their injuries. They are going to have the reunite of Micah Parsons coming. Green Bay is going to Dallas, get to have him at home. You have the Green Bay, who has an atrocious game. Was it a horrific game? No, it wasn't like them getting blasted like the Falcons did 30-0, but you shouldn't lose to the Browns. You shouldn't lose to Joe Flacco. That, with how well the Packers play the first 2 weeks of the season, the fact that they got beat by the Browns was a head scratcher, and it made you worried for the Packers, and just sort of in the long run of, hey, if your defensive line or if your offensive line is not going to be able to play well, which Cleveland has a great defensive line. They got a Hall of Famer at defensive end and Myles Garrett that's playing for him. Makes it difficult to stop anybody. That standpoint, you look at Dallas. Dallas doesn't have a great defense. Really, it showed against the Bears. Gave up all the points to the Giants. Also lost to the Eagles. I sort of sit back. I think that Micah has a good game. Do I think he has this exceptional game? No. Do I think he gets a sack? Yes. I think Dallas is going to do everything they can to make it so that Micah doesn't have a good game. How does Dallas need to do that? They need to run the football. The other issue is I think that Green Bay has been playing well against the run. Up until Jordan Love threw that pick, they held the Browns to 3 points. It was a 10-3 game. My thing for the Packers is can Jordan Love make the throws that he needs to and not make the ones that he doesn't need to? Last week, the throw that he made that put the Browns right back into it with the pick in his own side of the field was horrible. You just can't do that as a starter. So, from that standpoint, it's going to come down to Jordan Love. If he looks like he did last year in the playoffs, it's going to give a very reminiscent vibe of what Chicago just did to the Cowboys, which I'm here for. Nothing makes me happier than a primetime game to watch Jerry Jones and the Cowboys lose. I like Green Bay in the game. They're 6.5-point favorites. I think that more times than not, Green Bay is going to cover the spread in the game just based upon how poorly the Cowboys defense has played. I think that there's a lot of bad blood between Micah and the Cowboys. I think he's going to do everything he can. I think he gets a sack. Like I said, I don't think he has this like crazy 3 sack type of game. If he does, wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I think Dallas is going to sell out to make sure that doesn't happen, regardless of how that may affect the score. But I like the Packers going in. And then Monday, we got 2 games, both of which are not barn burners at all. You have the 0-3 Jets going to the 0-3 Dolphins, and then the other game going on an hour later, you got the 2-1 Bengals going against the 1-2 Broncos. Jets Dolphins, for me, it's going to come down to, does Justin Fields play? If he clears concussion protocols, I think that more times than not, the Jets are going to come away with a victory. I think the only thing that Vegas has got Miami as 2.5-point favorite. Can the Dolphins replicate what you saw last week against Buffalo? They played well on that Thursday night game. They had an opportunity to win the game. Didn't come away with it. Tua throws the pick. I like the Jets defense more than I like the Bills defense. I think the Jets defense is a good defense still. I think Aaron Glenn's going to have him well coached. And if Fields can play, I think that the ability of him to run is going to hurt the Dolphins. I like the Jets in the game to come away victory. Knock the Dolphins to 0-4. Would I be surprised if McDaniels gets canned after this week? No, but for sure next week the Dolphins play the Panthers, and if they lose and go 0-5 and their 2 losses in back-to-back weeks to the Jets and Panthers, that will be the end of the McDaniels run at Miami, in my humble opinion. The other game, you get the Bengals-Broncos. Bengals just get absolutely smacked by the Vikings last week. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers for the Vikings has a pick six, has a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and then causes a fumble, all of which led to the points. I mean, the Vikings had the game wrapped up at halftime. It was just a slaughter. Bengals looked horrific on offense. Nothing was working for him. Anytime you turn the ball over like they did, you're just not going to win NFL games. It's nearly impossible. It's almost, I would argue, it's probably the only thing more impossible with being on the negative side of the turnover margin and winning games is being 0-4 and making the playoffs. Like, that's the only thing that statistically has been proven harder. For the Broncos, you sort of sit back and look at them, and there's a lot of questions. The Broncos have been unimpressive. Yes, they get the week 1 victory against the Titans 20-12. Really should have came away with a victory against the Colts, but a penalty cost them 29-28. And then they have a close game against the Chargers 23-20. Their defense hasn't lived up to the hype so much going into this year. And Bo Nix, he hasn't played awful, but he hasn't played as well as he did last year. That being said, it's the perfect remedy for the Broncos. It's like, yes, do the Bengals still have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? 100%. The Bengals have talent at the position of wide receiver. Where the Bengals don't have talent is the offensive line. Brian Flores showed the blueprint to beat the Bengals. You just get pressure. Get pressure. I think the Broncos are going to bring a lot of pressure against Jake Browning. If you're going to win, it's going to be on your shoulders, kid. The question is where I think that, Pat Surtain follows Jamar Chase wherever he goes. They probably give some safety help over the top, and they just make it difficult for Jake Browning to win a game. On the opposite side, has the Bengals defensive line played well, but overall has the defense played well for the Bengals? No. I like the Broncos to get back on track with Bo Nix this week. I like them against the Bengals. You can give me the Broncos right now. They're 7.5-point favorites at home. I think they easily cover that. The Bengals are not a good football team. Heads up, Bengal fans. By the time his surgery toe is healed, the Bengals will be eliminated from playoff contention. You're not seeing Joe Burrow again for the rest of the year. But that does wrap up week 4 of the NFL season in terms of predictions. Looking back at week 3, we'll see how this week goes. Get back to you. We'll get Ball and Potts back on the episode next week to wrap up week 4 and look preview week 5. But I do want to thank you guys for tuning in. Time to pull chalks. We'll see you guys next week.